Welcome back to Dream Harbor, Traveler. Tonight, I would like to tell you a story called The Hills That Remembered Summer. The first light of evening rested upon a wide hillside, where tall grasses bent together beneath a warm breeze. Wildflowers nodded without hurry, and the long slopes shimmered as though countless green waves had quietly decided to become land instead of sea. Above them, slow white clouds drifted across a pale blue sky, while the wind carried the scent of sun-warmed herbs and distant rain that had not yet chosen where it wished to fall. Come with me for a little while. There is no need to hurry where we are going. The hills have waited through many summers. They are patient enough to wait for us as well. There is a place, somewhere beyond the maps that travelers fold into their satchels, where the seasons do not simply arrive and depart. They linger. They leave behind gentle impressions, almost like footprints in soft earth. The people who have wandered there have often said that the hills remember every summer they have ever held. Not perfectly, not as memories held inside a mind. Rather, as warmth resting quietly beneath the soil, as colors that return without being taught, as breezes that seem to recognize familiar faces. If you were to stand upon one of those hills at sunrise, you might notice nothing unusual at first. Rolling meadows would stretch toward distant ridges. Clusters of silver birch would shimmer softly whenever the morning breeze wandered through. Small streams would catch the early light and carry it like ribbons across the valleys below. Everything would appear wonderfully ordinary. And perhaps that is exactly why the hills were so beloved. Nothing there ever asked to be extraordinary. Nothing wished to impress. Everything simply became more itself with every passing season. There was one hillside in particular where the grasses always seemed just a little softer than elsewhere. People never gave it a grand name. They simply called it the Listening Hill. Not because voices echoed there. Not because anyone believed hidden spirits whispered beneath the stones. They called it the Listening Hill because everyone who rested there eventually found themselves listening instead of speaking. The wind had a gentle way of encouraging quiet. The clouds moved slowly enough to remind hurried thoughts that they did not have to rush across the sky. Even birds seemed content to leave long pauses between their songs. Morning often began with dew sparkling across every blade of grass. Each tiny droplet reflected an entire sky. Thousands upon thousands of little skies rested upon the earth until the first warmth of sunlight gathered them gently back into the air. The breeze watched over this daily ritual. If the breeze had a voice, it would have sounded much like an old friend speaking softly from another room. Never loud, never urgent, always arriving exactly when needed. It wandered through flowering time, over smooth stones warmed by yesterday's sunshine, across fields where butterflies drifted without choosing any particular direction. Some mornings it carried the fragrance of clover. Some afternoons it gathered lavender from hidden patches growing between ancient rocks. Some evenings it arrived carrying only warmth itself. People welcomed it every time. Children would lift their faces toward it. Gardeners would pause while watering herbs. Shepherds resting beneath scattered trees would smile without realizing why. Even the hills seemed to rise ever so slightly whenever the breeze passed across them. Not because they truly moved, only because sunlight shifted with the grass. The hills had learned long ago that remembering did not require effort. Every summer quietly settled into them. Every warm afternoon remained somewhere inside the earth. Every gentle conversation beneath an old oak became part of the silence afterward. If someone returned after many years, the place often felt strangely familiar. Not because every flower remained where it had once grown. Flowers followed their own quiet calendars. Not because every tree looked exactly the same. Trees grew slowly, stretching toward skies they had never seen before. No, the familiarity came from something softer. The rhythm, the pace, the feeling that time itself walked more slowly there. One evening, near the beginning of another generous summer, the breeze noticed something different. A single cloud lingered above the western ridge. It was neither dark nor bright, neither large nor small, simply content to drift where the warmer air carried it. The breeze greeted the cloud in its own silent way. Together they wandered over the hills. Where the breeze bent tall grasses, the clouds softened sunlight. Where sunlight became gentle, butterflies floated lower. Where butterflies gathered, tiny wildflowers seemed almost to glow. No one directed this. Nothing planned it. Nature simply continued one of its oldest conversations. The people below hardly noticed. They were occupied with ordinary joys. Someone spread fresh linen across a garden wall to dry beneath the sun. An elderly couple sat beneath an apple tree sharing slices of pear. Nearby, a child patiently watched ants carrying crumbs nearly twice their own size. Life moved gently. The hills approved. Summer has a remarkable way of stretching small moments until they become entire memories. An afternoon can feel endless when nothing insists upon ending it. A single breeze can become something remembered years later. The listening hill understood this well. Its grasses held countless afternoons inside their quiet swaying. If someone rested there with closed eyes, they might hear bees humming somewhere nearby. Not many, just enough. The hum blended with insects hidden beneath the taller grasses. Leaves occasionally rustled. Somewhere farther away, water slipped over rounded stones in a stream that had been following the same patient path for longer than anyone remembered. Every sound belonged. Nothing interrupted. Nothing competed. Even silence had its own gentle place among them. As summer deepened, the colors grew richer. The hills turned from bright spring green toward warmer shades touched with gold. Seed heads appeared atop waving grasses. Wildflowers completed one quiet chapter before another began. Blue blossoms gave way to pale yellow. Crimson petals slowly surrendered to tiny white flowers that seemed almost made of morning light. No one mourned these changes. The hills certainly did not. They knew every blossom was simply greeting another. The breeze carried each season onward with careful hands that no one could see. There was a path winding across the slopes. Not wide, not narrow, simply worn smooth by countless peaceful walks. No destination made it important. The walking itself was enough. Travelers often slowed without deciding to. Footsteps naturally softened. Voices lowered. Eventually conversations became thoughtful pauses. Then even those pauses gently dissolved into listening. Sometimes people would stop beside an old stone that rested halfway along the hill. It was not remarkable to look at, rounded by weather, covered here and there with pale moss. Yet nearly everyone touched it as they passed. Perhaps because someone long ago had done the same. Perhaps because warm stone beneath an open sky feels reassuring in ways difficult to explain. The stone remembered sunlight. That was enough. The breeze remembered everyone who had rested there. Not their names. Names drift away, but the feeling each traveler carried. Joy felt light upon the air. Weariness settled more heavily at first before slowly lifting. Hope carried its own warmth. Quiet gratitude almost sounded like leaves turning together. By evening, the cloud above the western ridge had grown broader. Its edges glowed silver. The setting sun painted gentle shades of peach and amber across its underside. The breeze wandered through it for a little while. Together they crossed every hillside. Their shadows rolled slowly over meadows where rabbits nibbled clover beneath fading light. Swallows skimmed the air one final time before returning to sheltered nests tucked beneath old wooden roofs. The world seemed content simply to become evening. Nothing resisted. The hills certainly did not. Evening was one of their favorite memories. Not one particular evening. All of them. Every sunset layered softly upon those that came before. No two were identical. Yet together they became something wonderfully familiar. Some evenings smelled faintly of warm earth after distant rain. Others carried sweet hay drying in nearby fields. Sometimes lavender lingered longest. Sometimes mint. Sometimes only clean grass beneath cooling air. Every scent quietly joined the others already resting within the land. If hills dream, perhaps this is how they dream. Not through stories, not through voices, but through remembered seasons gently folding into one another. Night never erased summer there. It simply tucked sunlight beneath the earth until morning wished to borrow it again. There were mornings when mist gathered low within the valleys. From the listening hill, it appeared almost like a calm white sea. Treetops rose from it, as though they were quiet little islands. The breeze enjoyed these mornings. It slipped through the mist, lifting tiny ribbons upward until sunlight gradually transformed them into brightness once more. The cloud often watched from above, patient, never rushing the dawn. The hills accepted every beginning with the same grace they offered every ending. Nothing was ever truly lost, only transformed. A blossom became seed. Seed became grass. Grass welcomed wind. Wind carried tomorrow. This gentle understanding settled naturally over everyone who spent time there. People stopped measuring days by accomplishments. Instead, they remembered small comforts. The warmth of a stone beneath their hand. The pleasant weight of afternoon shade. The soft chorus of insects hidden among wildflowers. The way clouds sometimes drifted so slowly they seemed to pause for conversation with the hills. These became the true calendar of summer. One could almost believe that time itself came to the listening hill whenever it wished to rest. It would sit quietly beneath the old birch trees. It would remove its invisible shoes. It would listen to the breeze passing through tall grass. And for a little while, even time would stop counting. The cloud, now familiar with every ridge and valley, learned to recognize the changing light that touched the landscape throughout the day. Morning painted the eastern slopes with pale gold. Midday filled every meadow with clear brightness. Evening wrapped everything in honey-colored calm. Each hour offered the same hills, yet somehow an entirely different place. The landscape was never busy becoming something else. It simply welcomed light in all its gentle forms. And perhaps that is why the seasons remembered it so fondly. They always found themselves at home there. The following morning arrived so quietly that it seemed less like the beginning of a new day and more like the continuation of a peaceful thought. Soft light drifted over the eastern ridge. The grasses welcomed it without surprise. Tiny beads of dew rested patiently along each slender blade, reflecting a sky so clear that every droplet appeared to hold its own little morning. The breeze returned before long. It had wandered through distant valleys during the night, visited quiet rivers, skimmed across sleeping forests, and carried the cool fragrance of moonlit water until dawn invited warmth back into the world. Now it greeted the listening hill once again. The hill answered in the only way it knew. The grasses leaned together. The wildflowers nodded gently. The leaves of the silver birches whispered their familiar hello. Nothing needed words. There are places where greetings happen simply because everything already belongs. The breeze lingered among the herbs growing between warm stones. Their scents awakened one by one. First came time, carrying the memory of yesterday's sunshine. Then chamomile, calm and sweet. Soon afterward lavender joined them, soft enough that it seemed to settle upon the air instead of moving through it. Together they formed the quiet perfume of another summer morning. Far below, a narrow stream wandered through the valley. It had no desire to become a great river. It enjoyed taking its time. It curved around smooth rocks polished by countless seasons. It slipped beneath overhanging branches where dragonflies rested. Sometimes it widened into calm pools that reflected entire clouds. Sometimes it narrowed until it sang softly over little stones. The hills had always appreciated the stream, not because it changed the landscape, because it reminded everyone that gentle movement could last a very long time. Nearby stood an old oak whose branches spread wide enough to shade a circle of cool grass beneath. No one remembered exactly how old it was. Children who had once climbed its sturdy limbs had long since become grandparents. Still, the oak welcomed every summer exactly as it welcomed every spring. Patiently, without expectation, birds built their nests among its leaves. Squirrels followed familiar paths along its branches. The breeze played there almost every afternoon. The oak never seemed to mind. Its leaves answered with the soft applause that only trees know how to give. As the morning stretched gently onward, butterflies appeared among the flowers. Their wings carried delicate colors that seemed borrowed from petals themselves. Some glowed pale blue. Others shimmered with creamy white touched by golden edges. A few carried warm shades of amber that matched the light gathering across the hillsides. None hurried. Each flower received the same quiet attention. Each blossom was enough. Watching them, one might forget the habit of measuring progress. One flower, then another still. A peaceful day asks for nothing more. The cloud returned just before midday. It had become a familiar companion of the season. Its edges remained soft and bright, drifting wherever the breeze suggested. Sometimes it stretched long and thin. Sometimes it gathered into gentle curves that reminded distant children of sleeping sheep or floating gardens. No shape lasted very long. That was part of its quiet charm. The hills never asked the cloud to remain the same. They welcomed each new shape with equal affection. Acceptance lived easily here. It flowed through everything. The changing sky, the growing grasses, the flowering herbs, the warming stones. Nothing insisted that yesterday must return exactly as it had been. Yet yesterday was never truly absent. It lingered beneath every new beginning. Summer itself seemed to understand this. Its days unfolded like pages already softened by many careful readings. Each morning introduced familiar comforts rather than surprising adventures. Each afternoon invited gentle observation instead of excitement. Each evening offered another opportunity to watch sunlight slowly become memory. There was a place where the hillside opened into a broad meadow filled with tiny white blossoms. From a distance, they resembled scattered stars resting upon green earth. When the breeze crossed them, the entire meadow shimmered as though moonlight had arrived early. Bees visited patiently. Their gentle humming rose and fell like quiet music carried just above the grasses. Nothing about the sound demanded attention. Instead, it seemed to reassure the landscape that everything continued exactly as it should. Even silence welcomed the humming. The two belonged together. Near the meadow stood a weathered wooden bench. Rain had softened its color through many seasons. Sunshine had warmed its surface countless times. Moss gathered around its feet where shade lingered during the hottest hours. No one knew who had first placed it there. Perhaps someone had simply wished to sit for a while. Perhaps that was reason enough. The bench asked nothing from those who rested upon it. It offered only stillness. Many afternoons passed with no one sitting there at all. The bench seemed perfectly content. It had learned from the hills that waiting could itself become a peaceful way of being. Eventually, someone would arrive, perhaps carrying a woven basket filled with fresh bread and fruit, perhaps with nothing at all. They would sit quietly, look across the wide valley, notice the cloud drifting overhead, feel the breeze move through their hair. After a while, they would stand again, lighter somehow, although nothing obvious had changed. The bench understood. Sometimes rest arrives before we realize we have been carrying anything. The summer days continued unfolding with the quiet confidence of old melodies. Sunlight wandered slowly across the landscape. Shadows stretched beneath the trees before gently retreating again. The stream reflected every passing cloud without trying to hold it. The hills watched everything with patient affection. They remembered not only summers long gone, but also every ordinary afternoon that others might have forgotten. A ladybug climbed the stem of a wildflower. Its journey lasted much longer than anyone might expect. It paused often, rested beneath tiny leaves, continued upward little by little. Finally, it reached the highest blossom. There it remained for several peaceful minutes while the breeze rocked the flower gently from side to side. Nothing celebrated the accomplishment. Nothing announced it. The flowers simply continued blooming. The ladybug simply continued resting. There was something wonderfully complete about that. Farther along the hillside, patches of tall golden grass had begun to appear. When evening light touched them, They glowed as though each stem quietly remembered every sunset it had ever witnessed. The breeze delighted in these fields. It moved through them in long, flowing waves. One ripple became another, then another still. Watching from a distance, one could almost imagine an invisible sea rolling peacefully across the land. The hills seemed to breathe. In, out, in, out. The rhythm was so slow that only those who lingered long enough ever noticed. Perhaps that is one of summer's oldest gifts. It quietly teaches us how to notice what has always been there. The warmth resting inside smooth stones. The patient circles traced by swallows high above. The tiny shadows beneath wildflowers. The scent that arrives just before distant rain. The comfortable silence shared between trees standing side by side. None of these ask to become important. Yet together they become unforgettable. The cloud wandered lower that afternoon. Its shadow drifted over the meadow, cooling the flowers for a little while before sunshine returned. The blossoms accepted both with equal grace. Warmth, shade, warmth again. Neither lasted forever. Neither needed to. Acceptance is not the absence of change. Perhaps it is learning that every gentle change carries its own quiet kindness. The breeze seemed to understand. It never tried to keep one fragrance from fading. It simply gathered the next. Fresh mint where streams curved beneath willow branches. Dry grasses warming beneath afternoon light. Wild roses climbing old stone walls. Each scent became part of its endless journey across the hills. As evening approached once more, the sky began its familiar transformation. Blue softened toward silver. Silver welcomed touches of amber. Amber slowly deepened into peach. The western horizon glowed with colors too gentle to name. The cloud lingered there for a while, becoming almost translucent as sunlight passed through its edges. The hills grew quieter. Birdsong became less frequent. The stream seemed to lower its voice. Even the insects hummed more softly now. It was not silence arriving, only the world preparing itself for rest. There is a beautiful hour during summer when everything appears to breathe together. The leaves, the grasses, the flowers, the clouds, the wind, the earth itself. No one leads. Nothing follows. Everything simply belongs to the same peaceful rhythm. The listening hill cherished this hour above all others. It was during these evenings that old summers seemed closest. Not as memories demanding attention, not as longing, only as warmth resting quietly beneath the present moment. The hillside never wished to return to another year. It loved this evening exactly as it was. Yet within this evening lived traces of every evening before it. The first summer wildflowers, the 1000th sunset, countless breezes, gentle rains, long afternoons, children's laughter carried away upon the wind, quiet conversations beneath the oak, books read slowly on the weathered bench, picnics shared without looking at the hour. All of it remained somehow, not in perfect detail, in feeling. Perhaps landscapes remember emotions more easily than events. Perhaps that is why peaceful places continue feeling peaceful long after individual moments have passed. The stars appeared one by one, not suddenly, patiently. The first rested above the western hills. Then another, Soon the sky held quiet constellations mirrored faintly within the still pools beside the stream. The breeze had slowed considerably. Now it wandered rather than traveled. The cloud had become little more than a soft ribbon glowing beneath moonlight before gently dissolving into the greater night sky. Nothing had ended. Everything had simply become quieter. The hills welcomed the night exactly as they had welcomed the morning. Without preference, without regret, summer remained present even beneath the stars. The warmth stored inside stones lingered well after sunset. The grasses carried the scent of daylight. Crickets offered their patient evening chorus. The oak stood peacefully against the moonlit sky, and somewhere beneath all of it, the hills continued remembering, not because they feared forgetting, because remembering had become their natural way of resting. Just as breathing belongs to the breeze, just as flowing belongs to the stream, just as shining belongs to the stars, so remembering belonged to the hills. And they did it without effort, without noise, without asking anyone to notice, only quietly, only faithfully, only as summer itself seemed to remember how to become another beautiful day. Night settled over the hills as gently as a blanket laid across someone already half asleep. Moonlight gathered along the curves of the meadows, turning familiar paths into ribbons of silver. The stream accepted every star that leaned close enough to meet its surface, carrying their reflections without ever trying to keep them. Somewhere among the grasses, crickets continued their steady evening song. It was neither loud nor soft. It simply belonged. The listening hill rested beneath the wide summer sky. If hills could close their eyes, perhaps this was how they would do it. Not by becoming still, for they had always been still, but by allowing every small sound around them to settle into a single peaceful harmony. The breeze had wandered farther away for a little while, not because it wished to leave, only because every breeze enjoys discovering how many quiet places the night has prepared. It crossed fields where wheat swayed beneath moonlight. It slipped between rows of sleeping lavender whose fragrance seemed even sweeter after sunset. It followed little streams until they joined larger waters, then returned once again toward the familiar hills that had welcomed it through so many summers. When it arrived, nothing announced its return. The grasses simply leaned together. The birch leaves shimmered. The oak answered with a gentle rustle. That was enough. There are friendships that need very little conversation. The cloud had long since dissolved into the great quietness above, becoming impossible to separate from the countless soft shapes drifting through the night sky. Yet somehow its presence remained. The air still carried the coolness it had offered during the afternoon. The meadow still remembered its passing shadow. Even memory itself seemed content to become part of the landscape. The hills had taught every season the same gentle lesson. Nothing beautiful truly disappears. It simply changes into another kind of beauty. A flower became fragrance. Fragrance became memory. Memory became comfort. Comfort became home. The moon climbed a little higher. Its light rested upon the weathered bench. No one sat there now. No footsteps approached along the winding path. Even the rabbits had found quiet places beneath hedges and low branches. The bench welcomed the silence just as warmly as it had welcomed company. Wood, after all, remembers trees, and trees understand waiting. Far below, the stream continued its patient journey. Its voice had become softer during the night, not because it carried less water, only because darkness encourages gentleness. Water that sparkles brightly beneath the afternoon sun often whispers beneath the moon. The stream had learned both songs. It loved each one equally. There was a small bend where smooth stones rested close together, their rounded shapes polished by seasons beyond counting. Every passing current greeted them. Every summer warmed them. Every winter cooled them. Still they remained, not unchanged, only quietly shaped by time. If one were to place a hand upon those stones in the morning, they might notice how comfortably they held the warmth of sunrise. If they returned at dusk, they would find another kind of warmth lingering there. The stones remembered, not with thoughts, with presence. The listening hill understood them well. Summer moved onward as it always had. Days lengthened almost without anyone noticing. Wildflowers completed their blooming and gently scattered tiny seeds upon welcoming soil. The golden grasses grew a little taller. The herbs became richer in fragrance beneath long afternoons of sunshine. Everything unfolded with such patience that no single day seemed different from the last. Yet together they became an entire season. That is how many peaceful things arrive. Not suddenly, not dramatically. One quiet day beside another. One gentle evening following another still. Until, looking back, one realizes an entire summer has softly wrapped itself around the heart. The breeze delighted in these slow transformations. Each morning it discovered some tiny change. A new blossom opening beside the stream. A feather resting where yesterday there had been none. Fresh moss growing upon the shaded side of an old stone. A family of tiny mushrooms appearing after a light evening shower. None of these asked to be admired. Yet each offered its own quiet greeting to the day. The breeze carried those greetings wherever it wandered. If it passed beneath the oak, it carried the cool scent of shaded leaves. If it crossed the meadow, it gathered warm grasses touched by sunlight. If it wandered along the stream, it borrowed the freshness of moving water. Every place added something gentle to its invisible collection. By afternoon, the breeze itself had become a little story of the whole landscape. Perhaps that is what every journey becomes in the end. Not a list of places visited, a gathering of quiet feelings carried home. The hills watched clouds arrive and depart. Morning mist rose and disappeared. Birds nested, then taught their young to fly across open skies. Seeds became flowers. Flowers became fields. Fields welcomed autumn, still waiting beyond the distant horizon. Nothing resisted. Acceptance lived in every corner of the landscape. Even the old oak accepted each falling leaf long before leaves had begun to fall. It trusted the seasons. They had always kept their gentle promises. Summer never hurried. Autumn never interrupted. Winter never stayed forever. Spring never forgot the way back. The hills remembered every one, not because they counted years, because each season had become another layer of quiet belonging. One evening, a light rain arrived. Not a storm, only a passing shower, so delicate that it seemed almost woven from mist. The first drops touched the grasses with tiny silver sounds. The herbs released fresh fragrance into the cool air. The stream welcomed the rain as an old companion. Small circles spread across calm pools before fading into stillness once more. The breeze slowed, allowing the rain to settle wherever it pleased. The hills drank quietly. No thunder disturbed the evening. No wind hurried the clouds. The rain simply visited, stayed for a little while, then drifted gently onward. When morning returned, every leaf seemed brighter. The flowers stood a little taller. The stones beside the stream gleamed softly beneath fresh sunlight. Even the air itself felt newly washed. The breeze smiled in its own invisible way. Summer had remembered another beautiful day. Weeks passed as softly as turning pages. No one could say exactly when the first hints of change appeared. Perhaps the evenings cooled by the smallest measure. Perhaps sunsets lingered just a little longer. Perhaps the grasses deepened toward richer gold. The hills noticed, but they did not cling to what had been. They welcomed what was arriving. After all, every season carried echoes of the others. Autumn still remembered summer's warmth. Winter remembered autumn's quiet. Spring remembered winter's patience. And summer remembered them all. That was its secret. It held joy without trying to keep it. It shared warmth without fearing its end. It understood that beauty grows gentlest when allowed to pass naturally into memory. The listening hill had learned the same lesson long ago. That is why people who rested there often found themselves breathing more slowly. Their thoughts became wider, less crowded, more like clouds than clocks. They would watch grasses moving together beneath the breeze. They would notice sunlight drifting across distant slopes. Eventually, they would stop wondering how much time had passed. The hill never took time away. It simply made time feel kind again. The moon returned night after night, sometimes nearly full, sometimes only a slender silver curve resting above the western ridge. The stars shifted almost too slowly to notice. The stream continued singing its familiar melody. The breeze continued wandering wherever gentle paths invited it. The hills continued remembering, not because they wished to hold the past, because remembering had become another form of loving the present. And perhaps we are not so different from those quiet hills. There are mornings we no longer recall clearly, conversations that have drifted beyond memory, summer afternoons whose details have long since softened. Yet somewhere within us, they remain, not as perfect pictures, as warmth, as calm, as the gentle certainty that somewhere, once, we felt entirely at peace. The hills would understand that feeling. They would recognize it immediately, for they had been keeping such moments safe for longer than anyone could count. Eventually, the familiar harbor lights of Dream Harbor began to glow once more beyond the edge of the story, not interrupting it, only shining patiently as they always had. The hillside remained exactly where it had always been. The breeze still wandered among the herbs. The stream still found its quiet way through the valley. The oak still stretched its broad branches toward every gentle sky. Nothing needed to be finished. Nothing needed to be left behind. The story simply became part of the landscape, just as every summer had before it. And every traveler who had rested upon the listening hill left something there as well. Not footprints. The grasses always lifted again. Not voices. The breeze carried those onward. Only a little more quietness. A little more peace. A little more belonging. Dream Harbor remembers such gifts. It remembers every traveler who arrives at its gentle shores. It remembers every evening when weary hearts choose, for a little while, to rest beside another story. The harbor lights are waiting tonight, just as they were yesterday, and just as they will be tomorrow. The tide moves softly against the old wooden piers. The lantern beside me glows with its familiar, welcoming light. Another story has found its place among many others. Another peaceful corner of the dreaming world has settled gently into the night. You need not remember every hillside, or every flower, or every quiet breeze. Dream Harbor will remember them for you. And if, someday, while standing beneath a warm summer sky, you find yourself pausing for no particular reason, if a gentle breeze brushes past your shoulder, if the grasses ripple like a calm green sea, if the air carries the faint fragrance of time warmed by afternoon sunlight, perhaps, without quite knowing why, the hills that remembered summer will quietly remember you as well. For now, traveler, your journey is complete. The harbor is calm. The tide is gentle. The lantern still burns. I will remain here, where waking slowly gives way to dreams, ready to welcome those who arrive tomorrow night, and every night after that. Until then, may your breathing grow slower. May your thoughts become as light as drifting clouds. May your heart rest as peacefully as the listening hill beneath its endless summer sky. And may sleep find you as gently as the breeze found the waiting grasses. Good night, traveler. Good night. The harbor lights will be here when you return.